Woo! Right, right. I hope that you're having fun with this special challenge where we asked all of you to scare us a little bit. And we hopefully haven't scared you too much with our challenge. I know that some of you have found our restrictions a little bit interesting. Let me see if I can find that comment. Yes, it was a lot of fun trying to work within the limitations. Supernatural is your thing. Fair enough, right? But that's the point of these challenges. We don't expect that we're necessarily going to transform your career and all of a sudden you're going to write it a different way than you ever have before permanently. But temporarily, for the sake of the challenge, trying something new can make a huge difference and can certainly jumpstart your career a little bit, take you back to the well, give you some new ideas, some new inspiration, just keep you motivated to write. That's what we like to do here at AutoCrit. And for those of you who are new to AutoCrit, we are an author platform with a community, software, author services. We're here to help you become the best author that you can be. And we're in the middle of the Fright Challenge. Yes. So do not forget to sign up. If you have not signed up yet, right here, sign up for the Fright registration. You still have no idea. You still have no idea what to do or where to submit. Okay, well, don't worry. You're gonna find out. About to get spooky up in here. Maybe a little bit creepy. A little bit creepy. It was fun trying a different approach. Definitely a little tricky. It is a challenge after all, and that's the idea. Boom. Good timing. Thank you. All right. So, for signing up, you will get some emails, some tips on tension. We've sent a couple. We're going to send a lot more this week as we ramp up for that final push because the deadline is coming up. It is Monday. Monday at, well, think of it as Sunday at 11:59 because as of Monday, it's going to close. So, yeah, make sure you don't wait until the last minute on that. We do have some rules though. You have to write a story that contains no ghosts, no zombies, no mythical animals, and no blood. I know, it's like those are all the tropes. That's kind of the idea, right? We're trying to get you to think a little bit outside the box, scare outside of the box, a little bit of a challenge. And we've gotten a lot of entries already, so a lot of people have owned up for the challenge, or you want to say risen for the challenge, and I am excited to go through a lot of the material. I've gone through a little bit and I've been impressed with what I've seen, and we're going to go through some today. I know, a little sneak peek, huh? And I just pulled some at random, so that's not an indication that they're doing better than other people or anything like that. Just pulled some random examples, and I haven't fully even read these examples necessarily, so it might be my first read at it as well. We're gonna do some live feedback. Everybody loves live feedback, don't you? I think you do. Sometimes looking in the mirror when you wake up can be scary. Well, speak for yourself. No, I'm just kidding. It can't be. It's true. Very, very true. Let's see here. I went a little bit more suspense. Was afraid anything in fantasy could be a magical creature. Fair enough. Smart move, Jim. Jim is a fantasy writer who won the last the challenge 2 times ago, the world building challenge, right? No. It was the yes. I forget these all blend together for me sometimes. I normally write horror, but I went sci-fi on this channel. Not sure if it's your best work, but it is new work, right? And you push yourself into a direction you don't normally do. So fantastic. Great for you. Took a while to get started. Usually paranormal or fantasy elements. Yeah, it can be hard when you have to think differently than you normally do. Is this challenge about fright or tension or both? Both. You can go for something. I feel like the difference between fright and tension is that tension doesn't always pay off what you're scared of, right? It's tense, it's a buildup, whereas fright tends to spill the beans, really come face to face with what you're fearful of. Either way, both of them deal with being afraid, and they both tie into this challenge. So if you have a big buildup and not much of a payoff, it's just to keep you tense and then it just stops. That's fine. Suspense really works. What about a thriller? That would qualify, right? We're not keeping this strictly to the horror genre. This is about, writing for fear and that kind of thing. Yes. And ultimately, it's going to be decided by our live audience anyway. So why are you asking me? Ask everybody else what they want. We're going to do that next Tuesday. I'm so excited. We're all going to gather around the campfire at the middle of the afternoon. But through the magic of the internet, we're all going to gather around the campfire, and then everyone is going to be able to vote live, but you have to be here, of course, and it'll be thrown in the chat. There'll be a link, and you'll be able to vote live as to which one was your favorite, and that will be the grand winner. But of course, we will have some prizes that are given out just for being part of the challenge. I know some of you are out there looking for those check-in emails. There have only been a couple so far. There will be some more though, so stay tuned. There's going to be a few this week. So yeah, stay tuned to that email box for that. The deadline is October 24th, so you're coming up on it. But remember, think of it as like 11:59 on the 23rd, just to be on the safe side. You don't want to come in late on that. Okay, so let's get back to what we were talking about last week, which are tips to make something frightening. And one thing that we brought up last week is that writing what you know can be helpful. And that doesn't mean writing what you know, as in, I know what it's like to be chased by a possessed elevator. I don't even know how possessed elevator would chase you, so whatever. This is what happens when we do things live. I may not know exactly how it is to do that, but I do know what it's like to feel anxious about an unfamiliar situation. I do know what it's like to be chased by something, perhaps, or maybe you have been, I don't know, been pursued by somebody, or you felt like somebody has. You can lean into those things. Of course, you can find similar things in your life. But we're going to go a little bit deeper than just beyond our life. We're going to do some kind of tips and tricks about how to maximize scares. What are some things that we can do as authors that will keep audiences on the edge of their seats? One thing we can do is we can not just be scary. See, when you ratchet up the tension and you just do more scary and more scary and more scary and more scary and more scary, it can feel quite repetitive. Ketchup on top of marinara sauce on top of diced tomato. There's not much flavor. Also, it can minimize how scary something is. Because if everything is scary, then nothing is scary, kind of thing. We want moments where it could be a little bit comedic. Oh, and then there's a scary thing. Or you want to lull the audience into a false sense of security. You probably can think back of some of the best like jump scares in a movie, right? And sometimes it's when you know they're coming and you just don't know when and you're just waiting. But some of the best ones were ones you never saw coming a mile away, because it wasn't in a scary scene in general. It was in a scene that seemed rather straightforward, and then all of a sudden, something really freaky happened. So keep that in mind. Don't feel that just because, especially for this challenge, and you only have 1,000 words, but don't feel all 1,000 words need to be about scary, 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 right? In fact, you could have kind of a slow burn where it doesn't get that bad for quite a bit of time, and we're kind of, like I said, led into a false sense of security, and it can make it land all the more. Another tip is to look at your sensory details. Now, this is pretty obvious to us as authors, right? We're trying to describe things. The audience can't just read our mind. I often say that writing is mind control. If you've taken my classes, you remember that. But, the way to actually affect what somebody is thinking is by allowing them to picture it, allow them to get into the scene. And often, getting back to picturing, we think specifically of visual, we might think of sound, but we neglect other possibilities. So one thing to keep in mind are the other senses. There is touch, you know, what could something feel like that might make it frightening, but there's smell. Smell is something that is quite sentimental, right? Sentimental. But smell is something that can really take us back, and it can have a very strong emotional connection, right? We often have scents that are associated with certain memories. Sometimes they're very positive memories, sometimes they're very negative memories, and it can just throw us for a loop, right? You smell that and you're like, ugh, you know. Can't Smell can be really visceral, yes, and it can often be quite disassociated from the thing that you from the reaction. So, you could have, maybe there was a dentist who did a lot of work on you and it was very painful as a kid, and their dentist office had a certain air freshener. And so every time you smell that air freshener, it gives you that reaction, right? So, just because there are certain smells that tend to give us a repulsive reaction, that doesn't mean that has to be what smells you use. Going back to the last thing, right? Sometimes it can lead you to a false sense of security. What if every time something is really bad, something really bad's going to happen in the story, they smell, pumpkin spice? No, I'm just kidding. Pumpkin spice gets such hatred. Who out there likes pumpkin spice? Probably a lot of you. Who out there hates pumpkin spice? Probably a few of you. But imagine every time something really awful happens in your story, you have that smell. Well, then that means that the audience is going to associate that smell with that story, and it gives them a fun little takeaway for your tale. I like this. This five senses. Thank you. Yes. Think of all of the senses: touch, smell, sight, sound. Me. Me. I think these are people that like pumpkin spice. I've never had it. There you go. I read that to be make your nose like your ear and watch. This is why we don't write in emojis. All right. Next tip is exploit fear unexpectedly. Now you could say, how do you do that? How do you make it unexpected when I'm telling somebody it's scary up front? Imagine you're literally writing a horror story, or for the Right Fright challenge, we're going into it hoping that it's going to give us that reaction, right? So what does that mean unexpectedly? What I mean is, sometimes what is scary is not what we expected to be scary within the story. You can even have a complete misdirection. So, yes, misdirection. There you go. Um, so, for example, you can have a big werewolf statue in the corner, and you're like, well, what's going to happen to the big werewolf statue? But it turns out that actually the thing to be concerned about is some toxic waste on the floor or something like that, right? You don't always have to make the obvious choice in terms of what is scary. That is one reason why we specifically called out some of the expected fears and we told you not to write them. Because our hope is that this is going to really drive in this practice, because this is something that you can take away from you and work on in your own stories. Because in my opinion, all stories do contain an element of fear, because life in general contains an element of fear. We're scared of so many different things. And again, we talked about that last week. If you didn't catch last week's YouTube live stream, we discussed different things that scare us individually and how we can put that into our writing. Well, every story can contain fear, but that doesn't mean that every story contains those trope sorts of fears, right? Monsters or violence or things like that. There are so many other things that make us tense. And often in stories, I have found it is when the author can make something that I don't generally find to be intimidating, that I find compelling. Because that can either tell me something really insightful about the character, that they're really scared of something that's not something I generally get scared of, or it can make me kind of scared of it, and then I think of it from that perspective, ever after that. And there's so many different ways of doing this. The scale makes me tense. From piano practice, I'm guessing, or some sort of musical practice. Yeah, that would make sense. Sometimes, how many of you are pantsers and you fear outlines, right? In a sense, because you're trying to take a beautiful artistic process and maybe distill it more than you want, and it gives you a lot of anxiety about whether or not it's going to kill your love of the craft, if it's going to I was just looking because he said bathroom scale. See, I was thinking the other type of scale. You're probably right. It's probably a appearance thing. But I would but in terms of outlines, you're worried that you're going to lose your love of the craft. Maybe you're not going to do a good job. Maybe you can't do it and you don't want to face trying something you're going to be bad at. Things like that. Fear of abandonment, fear of small spaces, fear of dislike, etc. It's true. I would say though, small spaces is still kind of an expected fear. That's a phobia that's fairly common. Uh, Phobias that are more unusual will have a tendency to hit the reader a little bit harder. You could adjust scales so they spare your feelings. I feel like you're speaking from personal experience on that. That's funny. All right, one thing that you might want to look at is sorry, before I do that, the anxiety of weight gain and physical appearance is something you can really explain because it's shared a lot of people. Yes, it is. However, that being said, we've all seen that done badly, right? People joke around about, when um, men write about women, they often will make them these, women that are really annoyed about their weight and always checking themselves out and stuff like that. And it's rather insulting. So you do have to be careful how you write that. But yes, it is true that a lot of us do have anxiety about weight gain and our physical appearance for sure. But a fun way of doing that is, go a bit further than that, right? How can you make somebody's physical appearance get affected by the consequences of their action, right? And so instead of them coming off without barely a scratch, I mean, so often, how often do we see that, right? They have these big obstacles, they have a big battle, and they come away, and it's like, oh, it's a little nick, and then the next scene it's gone, especially like in the movies. But you can not do that. Make them get affected. Make them have a cost of their appearance that they have to deal with. People, that's something that gives a lot of gravity, and people would take notice. All right, look at your rhythm. Yes, the rhythm of how you write can make a big difference in how your scene is landing. So, for example, short sentences tend to uh, make you have a quick breath. And I was were complete sentences. I should say like birds chirp, dogs laugh, bricks fall, the sky, it's blue. You have that choppiness, right? You do that enough and you sound like you're a little bit crazy. But if you do it sporadically, what you can do is you can get the person to try to change their heartbeat, especially if you make it a little bit shorter, maybe not quite as short as that. It sounded very William Shatner. It does a little bit, right? But that is that idea, right? When you lean into the rhythm and how it sounds when you read it back, you will pick up on things that can give it a sense of pacing that is tenser and is going to really rivet your audience. Daniel made a haiku. Did I? It wasn't intentional if I did. I don't think so. Count those syllables back there. I don't think that's what that was. The other thing too is the opposite, right? Instead of doing a lot of short sentences, a longer sentence slows you down. We talk about this with pacing. You've run the autocorrect pacing reports, and got in the software and seen your little pacing report, and you've gotten that big flag for the bold for the slow paragraph. Yeah, if you do that, well, keep in mind, slow paragraphs read slowly. Sometimes you want to do that on purpose, right? You want to slow down the action. You want to feel like everything is moving in slow motion. Sometimes you don't want that. And so you'll want a lot of quicker paragraphs, shorter sentences. And that can make a difference. The rhythm of how the sentence is even phrased, like read it out loud, figure out how that pattern of words falls, how that lands. It's especially true for a challenge like this. You know that ultimately this is going to be read out loud. So I would suggest reading it out loud. Or again, you can go into the AutoCrit software and you can have it read it for you. You know, hit that little speaker icon on the corner, and it will read it to you, and then you can hear what it sounds like. That could be really helpful because you want it to have a certain sound in the rhythm, in the pacing, and it's hard to read that sometimes. It's hard to see that visually. Sometimes you really do need to read it back or have somebody read it back to you. That could be even better, to be honest. If you do read it to yourself, I would probably record it and then listen to it later because it's still different than looking at it and hearing it at the same time. All right. Next tip is make us care about the people. You know, this is obvious probably to all of you. Characters are so important when it comes to stories. I often say they are the most important part of a story. We can all think of movies or books we've read where the characters were awesome and the story was okay. You know, it was pretty ordinary, but it was just okay. Very rarely do you find the opposite, where the characters are just okay, but the story is awesome and you like it because it's really hard to make it work. And something that a lot of horror does fail at. It's true. And that's because they become so high concept that they neglect to make the protagonists as interesting as they could, or the other characters. You have the whole notion of, cannon fodder, as it were, characters that are introduced just to show you how threatening the main antagonist is of the story. The red shirts. Try not to do that, because it does minimize it. If you don't really care about the victims, well, you don't really care when bad things happen to them. It also kind of lowers the stakes because, it's the whole NPCs kind of idea. Those are the people that are getting taken out by the villain. And who really cares that much about those people? I mean, we all should care about humans as just humans, but you understand there is a difference, right? If the author is not doing the due diligence to get us, empathizing with those characters, then when bad things happen to them, it feels more like an intellectual exercise and less like, oh, that's horrible. How could that happen? My character is wearing red. Oh, definitely have them wear red. I mean, that's fine. A mauve shirt. I love that. It makes me want to make like a Star Trek looking shirt that's mauve. And it's like, I don't know. Am I medical or am I cannon fodder? You have to decide. Uh, but yes, care about the characters. Here's another thing too, though. Okay. The main character. It's so easy to be like, well, of course you're going to care about the main character. Look at this threatening situation I'm putting them in. They have to barely survive against, we'll go back to the elevator, an elevator that's stalking them. Isn't that scary? Wouldn't you be scared? Of course you're going to empathize with them. And yeah, that's true. But does that make them very interesting? Not really. Often they'll end up being these sort of generic, standard sort of everyday person. And I'm not saying that all characters have to be uber unique or quirky, but they should have a sense of a personality, right? You don't want them to just be this cardboard cutout that, anybody can imagine themselves as. That's not generally going to be the best. That's often what happens when the author is way too enthralled with the setting, way too enthralled with the conflict and the high concept they created. It's like, wow, an elevator that stalks you, isn't that amazing? It's like, yeah, that is pretty cool, but I want to care about the people involved. And again, that'll make a really big difference. You can make a really scary story that's only about the people involved, right? Because it's their motivations of each other. You lock a bunch of people in a room and one of them wants to kill the other people. And there's not like a high concept to that, but it's very compelling because we are concerned about what is going on. And it's particularly compelling if we're concerned about the allegiances of each other, what's motivating them, things like that. It's the same kind of thing that can happen in a murder mystery, right? Murder mysteries can have the same problem where they just have a bunch of people that just get off and you don't really care about them. And it makes it feel, again, more like an intellectual size, more of like a fun logic puzzle than something I'm emotionally gripped by. I like it when the person you think is the main character gets killed at the start. So psycho scream sort of thing. Yeah, that can be a fun way of playing on it. The idea behind that is nobody is safe, right? This is not an author that's playing by the quote unquote rules, where it's the character that goes off on their own, well, they're going to get in trouble, or the minority character, or whatever it is, the stock characters that usually get killed first. That author is not playing by those rules, which means that you can throw out your expectations and you can be on the edge of your seat about what's going to happen next. That's another thing about caring about the people that can keep us on edge. Since we're so used to characters being thrown in and they have very little identity because they're going to get killed later, if you give everybody a strong identity, we really have no idea what's going to happen, right? Because we don't really know how to guess who is going to get killed or who's going to be affected by the antagonist, where those consequences are going to fall. All right, let's move on. Make the normal scary. We talked about this with the unexpected scare. But yes, something that you can do that is a compelling thing to do that people will remember you forever is if you can make something that isn't normally scary, scary. And the reason why is because you will have permanently affected the way they view that object. So, for example, miniature golf, generally not particularly scary. At least I don't find it particularly scary. Maybe you do. If you find miniature golf scary, tell me why. But somebody might find a way to make it scary, and then forever, when you go to a miniature golf course, you might have that in the back of your mind, and it could be a lot of fun. It also just shows a certain amount of creativity. And again, that goes back to this right fright challenge. What we were looking for was a creative, a creative situation. So we removed some of those props that you generally use, and we told you to think outside the box. So I'm really hoping that we get a lot of this, making the normal scary. A cabin without hot water, that is pretty scary. I agree. Fog. Yeah, right? Exactly. Exactly. All right, so let's look at some examples. I'm not going to reveal who wrote these. So if you did and you want to be like, "Hey, that's me," that's fine. Or if you want to just be quiet and listen, that's fine too. I'm going to give a little bit of feedback to these openings, and this lets you know some of the writing going on within the AutoCrit community. So I'm excited about that. Okay. He waited for her in the back corner of the coffee shop. He knew her routine. She would stand quietly in the back of the line, wearing her khaki-colored trench coat. Her hair would either be up in a bun or pulled back in a ponytail. She would look over the menu like she was deciding, but always order the same thing: a latte with 2 sugars, no whip, and a blueberry muffin. He watched as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She placed her order and stepped to the side. She looked at her phone while she waited for her name to be called. I don't know about you, but this is really creepy. I'm digging this. Um, what the author did really well is they just put us in this unsettling state without ever explicitly saying why, because we don't know why this person knows so much, but we know that somebody who's following around somebody who has this level of detail on you is going beyond that line of what we consider to be comfortable. Something bad is probably going to happen. Obviously, I know it's because of the right fright challenge, but just in general, this would be like, woo. And this is where specificity can be quite impactful. I often bring that up when I talk about writing, that specifics can be really engaging. The fact that he does that whole, a latte with 2 sugar, no whip, and a blueberry muffin, that sort of specific detail tells us a little bit about this character, but it also tells us, more importantly, how much this character knows about this woman. And that is a little bit freaky. If I had a little bit of a criticism, I would say from a rhythm standpoint, there were opportunities here that perhaps weren't taken advantage of. Because, for example, the writer could have done, he watched as she shifted her weight one foot to the other, like breaking that up might have worked a little bit better. I'm getting picky though because this isn't bad at all. I'm just saying. And then there's I think that's pretty much it. She looked at her phone. There's a lot of pronouns going on, but I don't know if there's a real good way of getting around that without just torturing the text, looking for clever ways around it. So I'd have to look at that, but just at first glance, it just feels like there's a lot of she, her, she, her, she, her, she, her sort of stuff. Serial killer. It does feel very much like a serial killer. Is this the total piece? This is not the total piece. No. This is just a piece. And this might be one of the finalists. I have not determined the finalists. I haven't determined the final finalists. I haven't determined the finalists, so you might get the full story. All right. I found myself staring into blackness of which I had never seen before. As much as I had spent camping in my life, this was meant to be nothing short of ordinary. This forest was somewhere I had spent most of my childhood. The same forest I now found myself being hunted in. What was hunting me? I had no idea. My friends were gone now, taken late in the evening while we slept. There was no screaming or struggles. They just vanished into this chilling void that watched my every move. All of their camping equipment still sat strewn about the camp, a camp I dared not return to. My supplies were still there as well. Before I was forcibly made to abandon it, I loaded my grandfather's .45. However, due to the unnerving bang just outside the range of firelight, panic had taken hold of me, causing me to run, leaving the blasted pistol behind. I like it. I would say this isn't quite as creative as the last one. It's a little bit more standard in terms of its setting, a forest and something's hunting people. So, I'm not as quite as gripped as the last one. Also, it's telling me a lot, and it's doing a little bit more of summarizing versus showing, right? It's a lot of just kind of background information. We didn't get to see the friends gone. It's creepy when it's described, taken late in the night. There were no screaming or screaming or struggles. They just vanished into the chilling void that watched my every move. However, I don't know exactly how this main character knows that because they were sleeping and they said there were no screamings or struggles. Like, how would they know if they struggled or not? Because can't you struggle quietly? And the chilling void that watched my every move, and it's like, honey, me, I have no idea. It just feels a little too vague. Wouldn't the main character, how is it watching their every move and chill about? Like, I feel like it's going out of its way in the text to be kind of coy about what this is, but I feel like the main character would at least be describing it in some way, right? Wouldn't they be like, somebody said, do people struggle quietly? I mean, you can if you're gagged, or you can't, right? I mean, maybe I'm just being a little bit picky, but can avoid watch anything. Exactly. That's a little bit confusing to me, right? So it sounds like this person is disturbing. This is nothing disturbed. Nothing disturbed, no signs of trouble is a trope. Yeah, it like I said, this feels a little bit more generic. It's not bad, but I'm a little bit concerned about how much it's just kind of telling me. I'm not really feeling like in the moment so much. It feels a little bit more of a summary, and I don't understand why it's so coy in what it's describing, because did they see anything? Because they said, I have no idea what it is, but then they said the chilling void watched my every move, which means I feel like they have at least they may not be able to fully rationalize what it is, but what is it? Like, what did they even see? Right? Or do they just feel like it's watching their every move? But why would they think that? So I have a lot of questions that feel like it's not necessarily there. Haven't you ever felt like someone's watching it but you couldn't see them or it? Yes, but I wouldn't write it like that. If that's what the writer was going for, then I would say what would have been better for me personally, and this does get subjective. Like I said, this isn't bad, but they just vanished into this chilling void, and then I would put a break there, and then I would say, "It's still out there. Watch, or is it still out there watching my every move? Question mark. Or it's still out there watching my every move. Maybe." That feels a little bit more like this present force than they just vanished in the chilling voyage that watched my every move, because it's almost like it was watching you as they vanished. But then why did it? Like, I don't like that sentence a lot. And again, I'm getting picky, but this is my job. Okay, I'm an editor. You can send your hate comments below. No, I mean, whoever wrote this, don't feel bad. You did a great job. I don't want you to feel like you are not meeting the challenge. I'm just giving you some suggestions to get even better. All right. Eerie nights like the one Evander James was experienced were strangely becoming more and more common. A shiver ran the length of his skin as the cooling fall air licked at his flesh with an uptick in the wind. The low waiting light of the street lamp as he walked beneath gave just enough guidance in the murkiness of the creeping fog. Evander. It was almost as if the wind itself was howling his name, but he blew it off as his overthinking mind as he turned the corner onto his street. He quickened his pace then, jogging a bit, convinced a downpour would open any sentence. All right, this is a pretty cool beginning. Creepy. Feels like a typical sort of ghost story. I do love that. Yes, the air licking his skin. I like that because it's really gross and weird and odd and quirky, and it makes me interested. Um, I don't like the choice where it says it was almost as if the wind itself was howling out his name, but he blew it off. I don't like the idea of using the verb blew it off because I like the blowing coming externally, not internally. Again, I'm being picky, but I would say he wrote it off as overthinking would be better, because then we have a separation between the main character uh wind and the other wind. But maybe you disagree. Do you disagree? Do you think keeping the blowing going, the wind and the breeze, is all of that something that actually is benefiting? So uh I don't know if I love that the first sentence either, because I feel like a shiver ran the length of his skin is such a better starting line than that first one. And I don't know if I need to know that this is more and more common, because I feel like as soon as you're saying it's more and more common, I understand what you're saying. It's getting worse and worse. But again, more and more common almost makes it seem mundane when you write it like that, just in the word choice. So I would, it does it feels like it in the word choice sense, it's not ratcheting it up. It's almost like it's becoming more accepted, right? And I just don't know if you need that opening sentence. I feel like you could just start with a shiver ran the length, and start there. Yeah, more frequent would be better, or uh, the eerie nights were becoming worse. I liked it as a dismissive thing. Fair enough. I kind of like the idea where the main character is writing off how often this is happening, and you are onto it, and you're like, uh-oh, it's going to get really bad, and they're just kind of blowing it off. And yeah, okay. Either or. I'm getting picky. This is good though. I like it. I want to read more. Maybe we will next week. We'll find out if this makes the final cut. All right. He's running. Little Cody is running as fast as his thin 6-year-old legs can go. His bare feet skid to a stop in the ragged gravel. He winces with pain as the sharp little rocks pierce his skin. His breathing is fast and is hard. His throat is dry and burning. He looks behind him, eyes wide, struggling to see into the pitch black night. He sees nothing, but he can hear the darkness clawing its way to him. He turns to run, but his feet are stuck, being pulled into the earth by long, thick black thorns. No, he shouts, thrashing his body, trying to break free. Tears begin to fall as he hears the darkness closing in. No, no, stop, he yells into the void. He screams more as he struggles to free himself, the thorns digging deeper and deeper into his legs. He jerks hard to tear himself away. He loses his balance, but before he hits the ground, he wakes up. Sweat dripping from his brow, his heart racing, his lungs burning. I don't know if I like the whole dream thing. I was really into it, and then it's like, Oh no, it's not. It's not dream. Never mind. He just hit the ground and he wakes up. I don't think it was a dream. I think he just comes to. Never mind. I take that back. Yeah, I mean, this is fine. This is, I will say that just very technical. I would break up these paragraphs. I also agree that's a lot of commas. I think we could have shorter sentences throughout here. Um, it's funny that you say no wake ups when if you take my fantasy class, you'll realize that people pass out all the time in stories because they're overwhelmed by the scenario. But so that's fine. So I take back my criticism. The idea of a really intense situation that somebody comes to and then they come back. Fair enough. I think that this could be a little bit better though in just some of the technical stuff. Starting with a chase where thorns are attacking the character. Fair enough. That's interesting. I just think from a technical standpoint, it could be written in a more compelling way, and particularly break up the sentences and break up the paragraphs to get that pacing quicker. This is a really quick pace. It's like boom, 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 but it looks like a block of text. Maybe use regain consciousness instead. I don't have a problem with the word waking up. It's just for a second I was worried that the person woke up from a dream. So, although maybe they did, because it says before he hits the ground he wakes up. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what that's getting at. So maybe this is a dream. If it is a dream, then I think that's a bad idea. I think cheating the audience with a scary dream at the beginning and it's like and then it's really like a big action sequence. I mean, a fake action sequence. I don't like that. All right. She was cold. The weather unforgiving, as were her heels. It's been months in sickness. It's been months, and the sickness has been building. Never anger or rage, perhaps not a sickness at all, but a calling justified. She was new to life, I should know. The drive longer this time, the room, not unlike the others, musty and dated. She bathed without asking. The good book passed the time. She was familiar. Would this change anything? We talked. Trust was gained. As she knelt, my eyes closed. My soul would not be seen this day. I spun around her playfully, not unlike childhood games past. I halted to gaze at the fresh ink still raised and swollen. I knew it was time. I mentioned leapfrog. She giggled and I penetrated. I'm not sure what's going on. Her eyes sprung open as she grasped the comforter, which was no comfort. Mechanical and methodical, I thrust the knife over and over. I guess that's what's going on. I always count, as I counted the steps to school as a little girl avoiding the cracks in the sidewalk, except for that once. I'm finding the writing of this very difficult to get my head around. It feels very stream of consciousness, and the sentences are not quite landing on one another. I'm also not even 100% sure what is going on here because it's written so stylistically. Somebody's like, you know what's going on. Yeah, I can see where this is going. I feel like another few drafts would get you closer to what you were trying to do. So I think what you did was you were concerned about like filler words and stuff like that, and you just stripped it down so much that it feels kind of choppy, and it's hard for me to get into. But let's see, what do the audience think? Do you agree, or do you have a completely different take on on this? Because this is very stylistic. Obviously, again, this is a thing I harp on a lot. Paragraph breaks. That's a very long paragraph, not necessary, and that would help. But yeah, a little bit confusing for me. Definitely getting at something there, though. All right, so those were some of our entries. Like I said, picked at random, all over the place there. If you would like to learn more about writing for fear and specifically tension, because we do have our Nightmare Fuel class, Nightmare Fuel class, which is great for fear. We'll talk about that in a second. But for tension, building up drama and suspense, which factors into fear as well, and writing for frightening things, we do have our narrative tension workshop, and it is going to be going on this Thursday and Sunday. And if you sign up, you will get feedback for your writing that you do within the workshop. Excuse me. So it's a great way to get personalized feedback, kind of like you just saw. although it won't be over video unless you really want it, in which you can email me and tell me you really want it over video, because I can do that. But otherwise we tend to write it out. And you will have some live uh, uh, exercises to do, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll do some wordsmithing and talk about a lot of these writing techniques, but on a deeper level, and really get our hands dirty and get into it. So I'm looking forward to that and doing that with all of you. And like I said, we do have Nightmare Fuel. Somebody was asking for responses from the workshop. Most of them should be out now. If you haven't gotten yours yet, it should be back very soon. We are upgrading our system in terms of tracking all of those responses from the workshop, which is going to make it a lot easier for me on the back end, to be honest, just to keep track of all of it. But I do my best, and we are upgrading all of that, so it'll be a lot better in the future, and it will be. But at any rate, yes. If you haven't received yours yet, then stay tuned, because it's probably just a technical thing that I need to get settled on the back end. So I will look at that, Tammy, specifically yours. And actually, I'm looking for it in general. So if you're like Tammy, for some reason haven't received yours yet, just stay tuned. It'll come very shortly. How to write horror. Yes, Nightmare Fuel is going on right now, and we're going to be starting a new session of Nightmare Fuel in November. So if you missed out on joining our October group, which is epic, the October group is so much fun, you can join our November group, which I'm sure is going to be a lot of fun as well. Let's see here. I think that might be it. Yes. I don't want to talk about imposter syndrome. I talked about it last week. So yes. So if you want to join Nightmare Fuel, then that will be this link right here. So yes, join Nightmare Fuel. As part of Nightmare Fuel, we will have some special guests on. You can join the horror club. And we're actually going to be expanding the horror club in the future, so stay tuned on that. A little bit of a secret there. Shh, don't tell anybody. And we have a lot of things coming in AutoCrit, really, in the next short while. We're doing a lot of upgrades behind the scenes, some of them that you may not fully realize, but I can tell you will make things a lot better for everybody. But most of them you're going to notice a lot, because it's going to be quite something when it is all settled out. And yes, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going on behind the scenes. A little bit of a Fright challenge for ourselves, although it's a coding challenge. But we're having a lot of fun, and it's because of you. You are always pushing us to do more, and you're asking for new features and ease of use and all of these things. And so because of that, we are answering the call, and we are going to be doing that for you as best we can. Fright registration down below. Somebody was asking about where's the challenge submit link. Yes, if you sign up for the registration, you will get emails about it. There will be quite a few emails coming up this upcoming few days. So just keep checking your email, and you will get that sign up link through the email. All right. So that being said, I will be back on YouTube next Tuesday, because it'll be time for the end of the Fright Challenge. I know it just started, right? The end of the Fright Challenge, where we get to read all of the wonderful finalists. And then you all get to vote on the wonderful finalists. And as you can tell from some of the ones we read today, it's going to be some interesting submissions, I'm sure. That was just the tip of the iceberg. We have dozens upon dozens of them. We might end up with over 100 by the time we're all done. So it's going to be a lot. And we'll see how many we end up as a finalist, too. I'm going to try to fill up the time, but I also don't want to overwhelm you with too many decisions, because we also like ties and things like that. But we'll figure that out. Anyway, if you have not gotten any emails, you can always email support@autocrit.com and ask them about it, because perhaps there's something going on with your email itself. Maybe it's going to spam or things like that. So check that out. Will we read only excerpts? No, we are going to read the whole story. How could you possibly vote on your favorite story if you didn't know the whole thing? I can tell you, though, some of them are quite short. So that's where I'm not sure how many we're going to read from, because we're getting a lot of quick little, what do they call it? Like flash fiction level, which is great. But we'll see how that goes. And so next Tuesday, I'll be back for that. Don't forget that the submission form closes on Monday. So be in line for that. Do it on Sunday. Do it before late night on Sunday, please. I don't want you to miss out on that. Thursday is our tension workshop. If you would like to be involved in that, please do so, and you'll get personalized feedback. Otherwise, I will see you around AutoCrit community. How long do I expect this to take? Oh, I don't think it'll go more than the hour. No, we keep our live to an hour. All right, so I will see you around the AutoCrit community. Bye, everybody.